I spent 6 hours behind the wheel, heading toward the lake house I'd paid for in full. When I got there, it was empty. Harry hit me with, "We already did it last week, bro." No apology. Just some photos. I didn't say a word, but the next knock on their door came from the cops. I'd rolled up to Lakeview Retreat just as the sun dipped behind the trees, casting stretched-out shadows across the gravel driveway. My old pickup wheezed to a halt, tires crunching over loose stone. I stayed in the cab for a minute, hands gripping the wheel, chest tight with something that almost felt like hope. I'd been planning this trip for 6 months, our first actual family vacation in who knows how long. A week at a lakeside cabin with a cedar wraparound porch and a dock I'd pictured us all laughing on together. I'd been busting it at the warehouse, pulling double shifts, skipping meals, stashing away every spare dollar just to put down the $2,900 deposit. I'd even shipped the grill ahead, it was still in its box by the steps, the tape untouched. There was no smoke curling into the sky, no burgers sizzling, no familiar voices floating out of the windows. Just this thick, uncomfortable silence that felt completely wrong. I stepped out, boots kicking up a little dust, and checked my phone. The screen lit up with the text I'd sent weeks ago. Sunday, 6 p.m. Lakeview Retreat. See you there. That's what I'd written in the family group chat. Harry had replied, "Can't wait, bro." I must have read that message 3 times last night, heart pounding like a kid before Christmas. Now it was 6:05, and the place was dead. No cars, no lights, just wind whispering through the pines. My throat started to close up. I called Harry. The ringtone felt way too loud and all that quiet. He picked up after 2 rings, voice too chipper, like he'd rehearsed it. "Oh, dude, we went last week. Thought you weren't coming. Got some pics for you though." Pics. That's what he said. My stomach twisted like someone had reached in and squeezed. I'd footed the bill for everything, every board of that dock, every bed they slept in, and they'd gone without me. Last week? I managed to say, but he just laughed, all carefree and light. "Yeah, man, it was awesome. Chill will catch you up." I ended the call and sat there, staring at the dark windows, my breath fogging in the crisp October air. They didn't forget. That was the worst part. They made a choice. And what they chose was to leave me behind with nothing but this empty house. I dropped onto the porch steps, the wood cold and rough beneath me, pressing through my jeans. The quiet wrapped around me like a blanket I never asked for. My hands rested on my knees, heavy and useless, as night crept in and stars slowly filled the sky. I didn't cry. Couldn't even if I tried. But inside, my mind started spinning, dragging me back through memories I thought I'd buried. Harry's face was the first thing to come up, his usual crooked grin, full of charm. He was the one I'd always held up. When we were little, he'd sneak candy from the corner store. He'd get caught, and I'd be the one slipping the clerk a crumpled 5 from my paper route money. Mom would whisper, "He's fragile, you're strong. Help him." And I did. Every damn time. By the time we were teenagers, it wasn't candy anymore, it was getting him out of trouble. At 17, he owed $850 in poker losses. Showed up with a busted lip and that same smile as I handed over my savings from bagging groceries. "You're the best, man," he said, like that made it okay. And I nodded, proud to be the strong one, even though I felt hollow inside. Then, just last year, I caught him using my credit card, $550 for some flashy gaming console. I confronted him, hands shaking, and all he did was shrug. "Glitch, bro, chill." Mom brushed it off. "He's just impulsive. You know that." I let it go. What's the point of arguing when it feels like yelling into fog? Family doesn't keep score. That's what they always said. But it wasn't just Harry. Mom leaned on me, too, only her price came in guilt. 2 winters ago, she called in a panic. The heat's out. Your dad's too proud to fix it. I wired $1,300 for a new furnace and paid my rent late that month. She never even said thank you. Just, Harry's struggling again. Can you help out a little more? Dad barely spoke, but his silence always cut the deepest. I'd bring them groceries when they were running low, and he'd barely look up from the TV, like I was just some delivery guy, not his son. And then came Thanksgiving. The one that broke something in me. I drove 3 hours with a turkey I'd roasted myself. My hands were still greasy from the oven. They were already in the den when I walked in, laughing over a bottle of wine I'd brought the month before. I stood in the doorway for a second, invisible. Then I heard Harry. He's got no life, just a paycheck with legs. Mom chuckled. It was soft, but it sliced deep. Well, at least he's good for something. Dad just snorted. Didn't argue. I stood there holding the tray, my arms shaking, heat rising up my neck. Set the turkey down, walked out without a word. Their laughter followed me to the car. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Just a bad night. Families say dumb stuff. Love means taking the hits, right? But sitting on that porch, that lie finally fell apart. The lake house wasn't a fluke, it was the clearest sign yet of a truth I didn't want to see. I'd been the one holding everything together, building their lives one sacrifice at a time. Harry's rent when he got kicked out. Mom's car repairs. Dad's fishing gear he never paid me back for. I thought helping was how you earned your place in a family. But turns out, belonging only worked one way. They took and took, and when I finally asked for a seat at the table I'd set, they locked the damn door. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a bank notification I didn't have the heart to check. Instead, I stared at that unopened grill box. Its perfect corners and shiny tape felt like a joke I wasn't in on. I'd sent that message 2 weeks ago, picturing Dad manning the grill, flipping burgers while Harry cracked open beers, and Mom fussed with the plates like she always did. It was supposed to be a memory in the making, a family moment I'd bought and paid for but would never actually get to live. All those nights I'd pushed through double shifts, stacking boxes until my back screamed, mornings where I skipped breakfast and nursed cheap coffee just to save a little more, it had all been for this week. This cabin. This chance to finally feel like we were something close to whole again. But they'd taken that from me. And it didn't hit like sadness. It burned hotter than that. Sharper. My chest tightened with the realization that I hadn't just been the provider, I'd been the anchor, the bank, the damn fool holding everything together while they drifted off without me. They'd left me behind, standing here with nothing but a quiet cabin and a smug little text offering pictures. Like I was some cousin they barely knew, someone they felt obligated to throw scraps at. I pressed the heels of my palms into my eyes, trying to steady myself. That pressure, it kept me grounded. Kept me from unraveling. It wasn't the first time they'd cut me out. But it was the first time I couldn't pretend it was an accident. This was a choice. Their choice. I dropped my hands and stood, the cold working its way through my jeans and into my bones. The lake stretched out in front of me, quiet and still, catching the reflection of a sky I didn't feel part of anymore. I'd spent so many years trying to earn their love. Giving them my time, my money, my pride, handing over little pieces of myself until there was barely anything left. But love, real love, isn't supposed to leave you empty like that. It's not supposed to bleed you dry. I turned toward my truck, keys like ice in my grip. They'd had their week. Their fish. Their laughs. Tomorrow, I'd have mine. Not revenge, not yet, but something close. A reckoning. I wasn't their afterthought anymore. I wasn't going to keep building lives I'd never be allowed to live in. So I drove away from that lake house that night. Watched it shrink in my rearview mirror until the cabin disappeared into the trees. The highway stretched out in front of me, just a thin ribbon of gray under a sky with no moon. I gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles went white. There was this low heat burning inside me, anger, sure, but deeper than that. Like a coal that had been smoldering for years and finally caught flame. My phone buzzed on the seat next to me. Harry's name lit up the screen. I let it ring until it stopped, then glanced at his message. "Bro, chill. We'll send you some of the fish we caught. Epic week. Fish." Like I was some stray dog they were tossing leftovers to. I didn't reply. Just stared at those words as they repeated in my head. Epic week. I could see it. Harry reeling in some base with that proud grin. Mom snapping photos. Dad kicking back with a beer, probably the ones I bought. And me? I'd been lifting boxes. Counting the days. Dreaming about a dock I'd never even stand on. When I got back to my apartment, I tossed my keys onto the counter and dropped into the couch. The springs groaned beneath me, loud in the silence. I couldn't sleep. That heat inside me just kept building. Out of habit, I grabbed my laptop, popped it open, and checked my bank account. That's when I saw it. A $1,300 charge from Lakeview Boat Rentals. Dated just the day before. My heart skipped. I hadn't rented anything. I was on shift when that charge went through. But the timing matched their trip. Last week, the week they said I couldn't make it. I clicked into the details, and there it was, charged to one of my cards. The one Harry had memorized from the whole glitch thing last year. He hadn't just gone without me. He'd stolen from me. Again. This wasn't some innocent mistake. It was planned. I slammed the laptop shut, my pulse pounding in my ears. His face filled my mind, grinning, shrugging it off like always. Like my hard work was his personal vending machine. I snatched up my phone and called Mom. My voice was tight as a tripwire. "Where's Harry?" She hesitated, then gave that soft sigh she always used when trying to smooth over his messes. "Oh, honey, he's at home." "What's going on?" I didn't waste time. He used my card. Rented a boat. $1,200. Last week. The line went quiet. Then, finally. He didn't mean to, you know how he is. He just wanted to make it special for us. Special. That word hit like a punch. Special for who? I snapped. Because it sure as hell wasn't for me. She started to respond, probably to excuse it again, but I cut her off. He thought I'd just pay for it. Like always. Then I hung up. My hand was shaking when I set the phone down. I paced the living room, boots scuffing the worn carpet, heart racing. It wasn't just the money, though $1,200 was half my rent. That hit would echo for months. It was the betrayal. The planning. He'd keyed in my numbers, rented that boat, laughed on that lake, all while I was none the wiser. And Mom. Still covering for him like always. Like I was the problem for being upset. I stopped in front of the window, looking down at the flickering streetlight outside, and something inside me clicked. Sharp. Final. This wasn't a one-time slip. This was what I'd been to them for years, the safety net. The backup plan. The guy they forgot to invite but always expected to foot the bill. I sat down again, slower this time. Pulled out my phone. Not to call. Just to think. Harry's text was still there. That stupid offer about fish. I stared at it for a long second, and then deleted it. After that, I opened my bank app again, took a screenshot of the charge, and saved it to my camera roll. Evidence. Something concrete. My mind was running, connecting the dots that had always been there, but I'd never really let myself see. The lake house. The boat. Every loan and favor and silent sacrifice over the years that no one ever paid back. I'd been their backup plan. Their convenience. Their fool. But not anymore. Tomorrow, I was done playing the role they'd cast me in, dependable, invisible, disposable. They'd had their fun. Made their memories. Left me to pick up the tab, like I always did. But this time, I wasn't going to shrug and smile and eat the cost. This time, I wasn't going to bend. This time, something was gonna break. Not me, them. Their illusion. Their grip on me. The game they kept running, thinking I wouldn't notice. I leaned back, the couch creaking beneath me, and stared up at the ceiling. The rage wasn't hot anymore. It had gone cold, controlled, sharp. It wasn't some wild explosion. It was a knife I'd been quietly sharpening for years. They thought they could keep me in the dark, but the truth is, I've been watching them for a long time. And tomorrow? I'd walk into the light and make sure they saw me. Not as their wallet, not as some tag-along shadow, but as the man they pushed too far. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. I pulled into my parents' driveway the next evening. The engine ticked as it cooled. A thick folder sat in the passenger seat beside me, heavy with everything I'd never said out loud. The windows of the house glowed warm, cozy, like a painting of the kind of family we never really were. A lie with a porch light. I hadn't slept. Spent the night printing out bank records, transaction histories, old receipts, anything that showed the truth. Every cent. Every sacrifice. Every time they'd taken without giving back. My boots hit the front steps hard. I didn't bother knocking. Just turned the knob and walked in. They were all right where I expected. Harry was slouched on the couch, eyes glued to his phone. Mom was fluttering around with a tray of cookies, playing hostess in her own house. Dad was in his armchair, half watching a baseball game. They looked up when I came in, surprised, like I wasn't supposed to be there. I didn't wait for pleasantries. Just walked in and dropped the folder onto the coffee table with a solid, echoing thump. "This," I said, voice flat, "is everything I've paid for you." Harry didn't even sit up. Just smirked and said, "What's this, your diary?" I ignored him. Flipped the folder open. Pages spilled out like confessions. $2,900, the lake house they enjoyed without me. $1,300, the boat rental Harry had slipped onto my card. $850, his gambling tab from high school. $1,300, the furnace I bought when Mom called crying 2 winters ago. I pointed to the lake house line. "That weekend getaway you all had? I paid for that. Then the boat. This was charged to my card last week. Harry used it. And all of this?" I swept my hand across the rest. "Years of bailing you out. Helping. Sacrificing. And I'm done." Mom froze, hands midair over the tray, mouth slightly open. "Honey, we're family. Why are you trying to make this ugly?" Harry snorted. "You're so dramatic, man. It's not like we held a gun to your head." I looked straight at him. "No. You just took what I gave and laughed when I wasn't looking." Dad finally muted the TV, turning to us with a frown. "What's this about a boat?" I slid the printed screenshot toward him. "Lakeview Boat Rentals. $1,200. Charged last week. Harry used my card. Again. While you were all out there fishing on my dime." Harry's smirk twitched. Just for a second. Then came the shrug. "It was for the family. You'd have paid for it anyway." I leaned in, quiet and deliberate. "I reported it as fraud this morning." The air snapped still. Harry's phone slipped between the cushions. Mom's tray hit the floor with a loud clatter. Dad pushed himself up, face going red. You turn on your own brother over this? He turned on me first, I said, heat rising. He stole from me. Planned it. And then you all went and enjoyed a trip I paid for, knowing I wouldn't be there. Mom stepped forward, wringing her hands. We didn't mean to hurt you. Harry said you couldn't make it, that you were busy. Busy? I let out a bitter laugh. I was working overtime to pay for that cabin. You knew that. Harry rolled his eyes, tone thick with that same dismissive shrug he'd always used. Get over it, bro. It's not that deep. That's when I dropped the hammer. It is that deep, I said. Because it's theft. And the bank has your name now. You're not walking away from this one. The energy in the room changed. Like the floor tilted a little. Panic crept in around the edges. Mom's voice cracked. You can't do this. We'll fix it. We'll pay you back. I shook my head. I'm not here to make a deal. I'm here to finish this. Dad jabbed a finger toward me. You're tearing this family apart over a few bucks. I met his glare. No. You tore this family apart the second you let him treat me like a damn ATM and called it love. The silence that followed was tight. Tangled. Like everyone was holding their breath. That's when Aunt Sandy's voice floated in, quiet but cutting. I hadn't even noticed her there, sitting in the corner with a cup of tea. I saw it, she said softly. Harry planned the boat rental. Bragged about it at the lake. Said you'd never notice the charge. Her words hit like a jolt. Harry's head snapped toward her. What the hell, Sandy? She didn't flinch. Just stared at him. It's true. They joked you'd just pay it like always. I should have told you. Mom turned toward her, then back to me, eyes wide. Dad deflated into his chair like the wind had gone out of him. Harry started to stammer. She's lying. I didn't. But I cut him off, voice calm and done. Save it. She's not the one with her name on the bank record, I said, stepping back, arms crossed tight across my chest. You thought I'd keep letting it slide. I gave them all a hard look. You were wrong. Mom reached out, voice soft and pleading. Let's just talk this out, please. But I shook my head again, slow and sure. We're past talking. You'll be hearing from the cops next. I turned toward the door. The folder stayed behind on the table, pages splayed open like a crime scene, proof of every line they'd crossed, every favor turned expectation. A road map of their greed, and I'd finally stopped being the one steering. As I stepped outside, Aunt Sandy's voice trailed after me. Calm. Clear. You didn't deserve this. I paused at the screen door, just for a second, then nodded once. She was right. I didn't. They'd built their good times on my back, cashed in on my silence. But I wasn't carrying any of it anymore. The door slapped shut behind me, and their stunned faces disappeared into the dark. I'd lit the fuse. Now it was just a matter of time. The next morning, at 7:35 sharp, my phone buzzed. Some local number I didn't recognize. I was still groggy, running on maybe 2 hours of restless sleep. I picked up. This is Officer William, the voice said, calm, professional. Calling about your fraud report, $1-300, Lakeview Boat Rentals. I rubbed my eyes. Yeah. That's mine. We've recovered texts your brother sent to a friend, he went on. One said, use his card, he's a sucker. My jaw clenched. We're heading to your parents' home today to collect statements, he added. I sat up straighter, heart pounding but steady. Do you need me there? No, sir. You've given us enough already. We'll handle the rest. I thanked him and ended the call. The silence that settled in my apartment felt different this time, not empty, but clean. Protective. They were finally facing the wreckage they'd created. And for once, I wasn't the one cleaning it up. I was pouring coffee when the next blow landed. My email pinged with a new alert, from a pawn shop app I'd long forgotten I linked to my old guitar. The listing stared me down like a ghost. Vintage Martin acoustic. $320. Sold 2 weeks ago. My stomach dropped. It was Grandpa's guitar. The same one he taught me chords on, sitting on his back porch with a cigarette tucked behind one ear and patience in his voice. I hadn't seen it in months, figured it got lost in the shuffle during my last move. But I remembered exactly where I'd last seen it, in Mom's garage. Back when Harry had offered to help me store a few things. I called the shop. My voice came out steady, thin. The guy on the other end confirmed it without hesitation. Yeah. Brought in by a guy named Harry. Said it was his. I thanked him and hung up, the mug warming my palms while everything else inside me froze. He'd pawned it. The only piece of Grandpa I still had. Traded it for cash right before riding off on a boat I paid for. And Mom? She must have known. She dodged every question I asked about it back then, played it off like it was no big deal. My phone lit up again. Mom, this time. I didn't answer. Just let it go to voicemail, then hit play. Her voice trembled through the speaker. The police came by, asking about Harry's texts. How could you do this to us? He's a wreck. No apology. No ownership. Just blame. Then Harry chimed in. Texted. You're ruining me, bro. I could lose everything. I didn't respond. A few minutes later, Dad. Call it off. You're killing your mother. I tossed the phone onto the couch. Let their words bounce off like rain on a windshield. They weren't sorry, they were scared. Not pleading for forgiveness, just clawing for control. But they weren't getting it back. That afternoon, I drove down to the bank. Filed an affidavit for the boat charge, froze all my accounts. The teller, a woman with kind eyes and a slow, thoughtful way of speaking, looked up from her screen. You okay? I nodded. Getting there. And for the first time, I meant it. Back home, I pulled up old texts. Found one from Harry, dated a few days before the trip. Need some quick cash. Can I borrow something? I'd told him no. He'd taken it anyway. The boat. The guitar. None of it was spur of the moment. It wasn't some lapse in judgment. It was a pattern, and I'd been too worn out, too wrapped up in keeping the peace to stop it. My phone buzzed non-stop. Voicemails from Mom, crying and cracking. Texts from Harry, long, angry, all-caps tirades. I muted them all. Then, about a week later, something new. A $1,600 deposit hit my account. From Mom and Dad's joint savings. No note. No apology. Just guilt money. A digital white flag. I didn't touch it. Let it sit there. A cold monument to their panic. The fallout wasn't quiet. One of my cousins texted me later that week. Cops showed up at 8 a.m. Harry tried to sneak out the back. Idiot. I almost laughed. Could see it clear as day, him tripping over himself while Mom wrung her hands and Dad turned purple shouting nonsense. The cousin added. They're saying you overreacted. But Sandy told everyone the truth about the boat. People are pissed. They're not buying it anymore. Sandy's words had cracked the whole mask. Harry couldn't spin it this time. Not with receipts. Not with the cops knocking. Not with a room full of family finally seeing him for who he was. That shift, I felt it. Subtle, but real. They weren't sorry. They were cornered. Exposed. And I wasn't the villain anymore. For years, I bent so they wouldn't break. I made excuses, smoothed over the messes, played the role of the reliable one, even when it hollowed me out. But now they were scrambling. And I was still standing. I leaned on the kitchen counter, coffee long cold, and looked out the window. The street below buzzed with normal life, kids racing on bikes, a dog barking down the block. None of it had anything to do with them. They'd taken so much from me. My money. My trust. My past. Left me with crumbs and called it love. But I wasn't starving anymore. It wasn't justice. Not yet. But it was something close, power, and for once, it was mine. I let out a long breath, slow and steady. That coal in my chest didn't burn anymore, it had hardened into something sharper, something unshakable. They were finally going to learn what it meant to lose me. Not just my wallet. Me. And I'd make damn sure they felt it. 3 weeks later, I packed the last box into my truck and drove south, 800 miles from their voices, their silence, their hands always out. I landed in a small town in Oregon, the kind where the roads end in trees and folks wave from their porches. My new place wasn't much. A weathered rental with a porch that leaned a little to the left and a view of fir trees that never asked anything of me. Rent was half what I'd paid before. And there were no guilt trips echoing off the walls. I picked up a beat-up guitar from a thrift store. The strings buzzed, but they had life in them. I played it under a sky stitched with stars, and for the first time in a long while, the music was just for me. No calls came. Not when winter rolled in. Not when Dad's truck broke down. I only found out because a neighbor posted about it in a local forum. A few days later, a small envelope showed up in the mail. Inside was a check, $2.20 from Aunt Sandy. My share of the lake house, she wrote. You deserved better. I didn't cash it. I pinned it to the wall above my desk, a quiet salute to the one person who saw me through the fog. Harry dodged jail, but the damage was done. The whispers in the family got colder. He didn't just lose my trust. He lost theirs too. These days, I walk my job, down gravel roads where no one expects a thing from me. I cook chili for one. I sleep without my phone on the nightstand. The silence doesn't press in anymore. It holds me. They thought I'd fold. Thought I'd come crawling back to patch things up, like I always had. But they were wrong. I'm not their fixer anymore. I'm building something new now. A life where I'm not an afterthought. Not a line item. Not a tool. Just me. Here's what I've learned, pulled from the rubble of it all. Family isn't a debt you're born into, it's a bond you choose. It's not obligation. It's respect. It's earned, not owed. For years, they saw me as a resource. A bottomless well they could draw from. And I kept giving, pouring myself out to prove I belonged. But real love? It doesn't hollow you out. It doesn't demand your marrow. It meets you halfway. I don't hate them. I just don't need their shadows to feel whole anymore. That quiet that used to feel like a scar. Now it's just air. You don't have to keep bleeding for people just because you share a last name. You can walk away. You can heal. You can plant your own roots in solid ground. I did.